And one day he comes in and he closes a sale on a startup that he has, and he kicks the gong. And he walked by me, and I looked over at him and I said, listen, bro, you could kick the gong, but just remember who it belongs to. Here's 6 things that made me millions in my 20s. Number 6 might surprise you. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Justin Guerra. I built 3 multi-7-figure companies before the age of 30, right? In my 20s. I'm still in my 20s. I'm 24 years old. And these are 6 things that throughout these last years of going ahead and building all these companies, I realized were the defining factors of what made me successful. Number 1, unimaginable vision matched with burning desire. So essentially, when I was coming up, a lot of people didn't believe that they could be successful where I was from. And in my brain, I had an unimaginable vision. My vision was I wanted to make $1 million before I was 21 years old. And at the time, mind you guys, I was living in my mom's house in this rinky-dink old city called Palmdale in the middle of the desert. And I was just coming out of a lot of hard things in my life. So I'll give you an example about how unimaginable my vision was, right? I remember one day I was sitting in my room at my mom's house at 18 years old, and I decided, hey, this year I'm going to go ahead and take my goals really, really seriously. So I went ahead and got a whiteboard and put it on my wall. On that whiteboard, I went ahead and wrote $1 million by 2021. I remember my mom walked in and she said, Justin, how are you going to hit $1 million at 21 years old when, you know, I'm 50 or 45 and, you know, we haven't done that yet. Literally, like, that was kind of her reaction. And it didn't come from a bad place. It was just unimaginable, right? And I just knew that in my brain that even though it was unimaginable to me, I had this desire to accomplish it, right? And that burning desire essentially drove me to do whatever I had to do to accomplish that goal. And if I matched both of them together, I went ahead and drove through any type of situation I had to be able to get to the position I wanted to be in life. And that's why those 2 things paired together made me so successful, because I was willing to do anything to accomplish my goal. Number 2, the willingness to understand that I don't know everything, right? A lot of people's own ego holds them back when it comes to success. For me, when I left my house and I started, you know, my entrepreneurial journey, the moment I got around people that I thought knew more than me, one, when they were having conversations with other people, I would genuinely shut up. Like, I didn't want to say anything because I wanted to intake as much information as possible. Now, when I had an opportunity to speak after intaking all the information that they spoke about, I would ask as many questions as I possibly could. Not only did I do that, I went ahead and applied them and failed over and over and over again. And through that process of understanding that I don't know shit and I'm willing to go ahead and fail as many times as I possibly can to learn, I learned so much about business and I learned how to scale these companies. Number 3, I jumped off a cliff and I built a plane on the way down. In every single scenario, a part of my success over the last, 6 years of building businesses, I went ahead and jumped off a cliff every single time. It didn't matter what the situation was. I ran towards it, not knowing exactly what was going to be ahead of me. And as I'm falling down the cliff, I learned everything I need to know for me to go ahead and make this company successful or make my life successful. It didn't really matter what the situation was. For example, a lot of people watch courses. I personally don't watch courses all the way through at once. I will watch maybe chapter 1 and 2 of the course, go apply it, and then I'll come back and learn more for chapter 3 and 4, go apply it, then so on and so forth. Because I always felt like, what am I doing? I got steps 1 through 3. Might as well go ahead and apply them as quickly as possible. Come back and go ahead and learn more. Because I learned more through the application and the taking of the risk than I did from actually sitting down, opening a book and learning. Number 4, the 33% rule. So when I was living with my grandmother at 16 after I dropped out of high school and I went to New York to go get my GED, I was living in this little room in the back. And what I did, I was spend a lot of time on YouTube trying to learn to get out of my situation, of course. I was trying to completely revamp and rechange my life. And I came across 67 Steps by Ty Lopez. So if you know this, you're an OG. And so I bought the course and I had about $90 in my bank account at the time. I was 16, 17 years old. And, I spent my last on this course. When I bought the course, I got to the chapter about the 33% rule, which is essentially spend 33% of the time with people 1 to 3 levels below you, so you could go ahead and give back and give them game. Spend 33% of the time with people 1 to 3 levels above you, so you could exchange ideas and learn from each other. And then spend time with people 5 to 10 levels above you, so you could go ahead and learn how to reach for really high and unimaginable things and go ahead and make them realities for yourself. And plus, they will help you navigate mucky waters when you're dealing with very hefty problems in your business. And trust me, it will happen. Number 5, choosing great enemies. So when coming up, I learned that competition is a huge part of the sport of business. And not like any other sport, you have to choose your competition, and because there's a lot of competition in your industry. When I was coming up, I looked at the biggest people in my industry, and with the most competitive spirit, I said, I will outbeat you. Now, let me give you an example. When I was 20 years old, I was working in a startup for a guy that was worth, $8 to $10 million, right? And I remember at the time, I was the top sales rep inside of my company, and he was the CEO of his company. So I was working in the office in the same startup as his. And one day I chose him as my competition. I chose him as the person that I will compete against. I used to be the top sales rep in my office. So we had a gong and we would hit the gong all the time, right? And I was the top closer. So, I took pride in my gong. I remember I would walk around closing sales, swinging the gong stick because it was my gong. And one day he comes in and he closes a sale on a startup that he has, and he kicks the gong. And he walked by me, and I looked over at him and I said, listen, bro, you could kick the gong, but just remember who it belongs to. Now, it's funny, but the thing is that I was so competitive that I wanted to learn everything about my competitor. And when I went to launch my first company, I emulated a lot of the things that he did, and I made them better in competitive spirit because I wanted to outperform him even though he was levels above me. If I would have chose a person that was maybe at the same level as me and we were competing at the same exact game, I probably would have became a better sales rep. But since I was competing with a multi-million-dollar CEO, I became a multi-million-dollar CEO. And number 6, this one might surprise you, but it's very true. It's the fear of not being good enough. I grew up never really accomplishing anything for myself, never really stuck to sports, never stuck to school. The only thing I stuck to was being a street kid and being bad. So it never really got me recognition. And for the first time in my life, when I was 17, after I dropped out of high school, I decided I was going to come back and try to make my credits. My teacher sat down and told my mother that based on where I wasn't going to graduate until I was 21 years old. Now, a lot of things in my life had already defined the fear of me not being good enough. But in that moment, I chose that I was going to be better than I ever imagined. I went ahead and got my GED, and to a lot of you that might not be an amazing accomplishment, but I went from being a 0.9 GPA student to testing second in the state with my GED. And once I realized that I could win and I could beat a lot of people, and I realized I have a competitive spirit in me, there was always this underlying fear of going back to the situation where I was looked at as not being good enough. So I vowed to work harder than everybody else, work smarter than everybody else, and build companies that would forever impact this world. These are the 6 lessons that made me successful in my 20s. I hope that you could take away from them, and maybe they'll make you successful at whatever age you are. Like one of my old mentors said, I'll see you at the top because the bottom is way too crowded.